Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm doing my TBR for the Readathon Non-Fiction November. This is one of my absolute all-time favourite readathons of the entire year. I look forward to it every year. I say every year, this is only the second year I've done this, but it was highlighted on my calendar as one that I could not wait for it to come around for me to do. As soon as that announcement video came up, I was psyched and scanning my shelves. I will link Olive's announcement video down below. She's the wonderful host. She's Olive from A Book Olive, who we all know is the queen of non-fiction on BookTube. So yes, I am going to just run through my hopeful TBR and some of the prompts. So as always, I've done a bullet journal spread. As you can see, you've got a sneak peek for November's theme, which is indeed pocket watches and timepieces. And this is my plan, and then I've got space for actual, as always. So there are 4 different prompts, and I've got 3 books for each one, with a TBR of 12 books in total. I doubt I'm going to get to all 12. My goal is to get to 6, so 1 from each section, and then I'll kind of obviously double up on a few of them. As always, the Non-Fiction November Readathon just picks 4 words for their prompts, and then it's up to you how you want to interpret them to fit with your own non-fiction taste, which I love the kind of range that you get there and the ability to kind of play with the different options. So the first word is design, and for me, I focus almost exclusively on art and architecture for my books. It's no secret on my channel, I'm really into art history and modern art, and I have several non-fiction books on my shelves that are about this. So the first one, which I don't think anybody's seen particularly on my channel yet, is In Montparnasse. I really need to learn how to pronounce that, by Sue Rowe. This is The Emergence of Surrealism in Paris from Duchamp to Dali. And Sue Rowe has a couple of books like this now which are focused on very specific artists and time periods within Paris, because Paris was very much a hub for a lot of different like artistic movements to come out of it. Cubism and all the work of kind of Picasso and Matisse and all that kind of thing. This one is about Surrealism, which is one of my personal favourites when it comes to art movements and artistic styles. I bought this quite recently and I'm really excited to get to it. So obviously design, art, I don't really need to argue about how these ones fit particularly, do I? In a similar vein, for one that's about artists, I have Desperate Romantics, The Private Lives of the Pre-Raphaelites by Franny Moyle. Some of these you might have seen recently because they are for my 5-star non-fiction predictions. I'll link that down below if it's come out. And if it hasn't, because I've got confused, I'm like back filming a bunch of stuff. If it hasn't, keep an eye out for it. Very exciting. But this is about the private lives of the Pre-Raphaelites, who were like a collection of artists who were making waves and doing very exciting things in the art world in the Victorian era. And they're kind of considered potentially like the very early beginnings of what we consider to be modern art these days. So yes, very excited about them. They had very torrid, exciting, fascinating private lives filled with lots of love affairs and scandal and all sorts of fun things like that, and I really can't wait for this one. I think this is one of the sections, like the prompts, that I'm most likely to read more than one from, because both of those I'm super psyched about. And then another one that I have had for nearly a year now is The Unfinished Palazzo by Judith Mackrell, and it's Life, Love and Art in Venice. This is both kind of crossing over from like art into architecture, because it's talking about a specific building when it comes to design. So there is a particular building in Venice which has been inhabited by 3 very fabulously glamorous women over the years, specifically ending with Peggy Guggenheim, who was an American heiress who did amazing things for the art world. She kind of sort of discovered and supported Jackson Pollock and Andy Warhol and people like that. She has the Guggenheim Museum or Art Gallery in New York, which is where I actually bought this on a family trip last year, which is very cool. And also I have been to the building in question in Venice twice, I believe. Yes, we did go there when we were there the second time. So this one's a little bit bigger, a bit chunkier, and because a decent chunk of it is about people who I don't know about, I'm really interested in actually the Peggy Guggenheim section of it. I don't know whether I'm going to get around to it for this readathon, but I am still keen for it at some point. Okay, the second word for the prompts is sport. Now, this is the one that I'm probably taking the most liberties with as a word. I think a fair number of people will, because I'm not the most sporty human being in the world. I'm active, but I'm not sporty. There's a big difference. So the first one that I might be reading, which fits most nicely with the prompt, is Das Reboot by Raphael Hongenstein. I didn't look at this book beforehand. I'm so sorry. That was an awful pronunciation. This is about how German football reinvented itself and conquered the world. Now, this was actually given to me by my darling partner Andy. It's been on his shelf for a while. He's definitely read it. Basically, his family are very, very into football as a general concept, as a kind of thing, both in terms of the sport, but also like the economy and social side of things behind it, and talking about it in like a fully international context. So they don't really have like favourite football teams, they just talk about football in general, which makes it very difficult to join in the conversations from time to time. But it does mean that I have read a few football books in the past. Some I've enjoyed immensely, some not so much. For example, Soccernomics, fantastic. I Am Zlatan, piece of trash. We have indeed done some stadium tours and things like that as well, and this one is specifically looking at German football. I don't know when German football reinvented itself. I was not aware that it conquered the world. I have no idea what exactly the book entails, but it's quite short and it's definitely about sport, so I'm probably going to read it. Plus, you know, he recommended it to me like comfortably over a year ago, and I feel a bit bad that I haven't read it yet, so at some point I should. Now, stretching the concept of sport to its absolute limit, I've got a book about the sport of butterfly collecting. Yeah, let's call that a sport. Why not? That sounds fine. This is Rainbow Dust by Peter Maran, and it's 3 Centuries of Delight in British Butterflies. And it's just a book about butterflies and butterfly collecting, and the various ways that these lovely, pretty winged creatures have kind of had an impact on the UK when it comes to like our culture and aesthetic and various things like that. It talks about the controversies around collecting them. I didn't know there were some controversies, but it does look really interesting. This was actually bought for my grandma for a Christmas present a couple of years ago, but she has since then passed away, and I decided to kind of basically adopt it into my collection. She loved butterflies, and I have a butterfly tattoo in honour of her, so I'm excited to get around to reading this at some point. It may be this readathon, it may not be. I'm more interested now because I read The Feather Thief recently. Like, I don't tend to read much natural history, but The Feather Thief was fascinating, and it was talking about like fly fishing and the use of like feathers from very rare birds in it. So this idea of like butterfly collecting and potentially the controversy and scandal and like issues surrounding that, I think could be really interesting because it does have a decent amount of kind of crossover of themes. So yeah, looks really cool, gorgeous cover, and I might finally get to it. And then the final one I have for sport is The Man Who Loved Books Too Much by Alison Hoover Bartlett. This is another one that I think is going to be a 5-star prediction, and this is the true story of a thief, a detective, and a world of literary obsession. Basically, some dude steals a lot of really rare old books, and then a detective chases him. And I'm going to claim that it's kind of the sport of that chase. This almost seems to be like Catch Me If You Can meets the world of books, and I've decided that that is almost the sport of him trying to catch the bad guy. Go with me on this one. Sport's a really hard one if you're not into sport. Like, I'm not gonna lie, Olive, this has been tricky. I think this counts. It's quite short. I think this might be another one where I will probably go for another one in this section potentially. So yes, really excited about it. I don't know a crazy amount about it, but I don't want to know too much before going in. Okay, the next section is True, which is lovely and vague and broad, which is wonderful. I have The Road to Wigan Pier in audiobook form. It's by George Orwell, and it details his life growing up in Wigan as part of the working class, and I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I've enjoyed George Orwell's writing in the past when I've read 1984 and Animal Farm, but I've never tried one of his that hasn't been like big and well known and kind of part of the sort of landscape of society. So it's going to be really interesting approaching one of his that is a complete unknown to me. It's the only memoir on this entire collection, I think. Yeah, it is. Wow. So well done, George Orwell. You've earned that critically acclaimed spot as a memoir that I actually want to read. So fingers crossed, and obviously it's true because it's his life story. Then I have The Romanovs by Simon. Oh God, this is big and it's falling on me. By Simon Sebag Montefiore. This is about the entire Romanov lineage, which is a kind of line of Tsar and Tsarinas in Russian history. I think there's 20 of them in total in this book. And the reason I'm putting it under this is because this is as true an account as we can have of them, knowing full well that there are going to be gaps in history. But all of my knowledge of the Romanovs so far has come exclusively from fiction. So I thought it'd be nice to have a true non-fiction in the mix. I know a little bit about the Romanovs from a couple of books that I've read in terms of like fiction books, and also a deep love of the movie Anastasia as a child. Rasputin in that is one of the best bad guys, one of the best bad guy songs ever. Once Upon a Descent, oh my god, it's just an amazing movie. So I bought this mainly because of my interest in that. I bought it over a year ago and I'm just hugely intimidated by the size, so this might be the one I go for in True, just to get it done. You know, like, I just need to start it and then it'll all be okay. But yeah, it looks absolutely amazing. It's got tiny text as well. Like, holy crap, this is gonna be such a battle. But I am really keen to get to it. And then we have one which I think is actually going to be stranger than fiction but genuinely true, is Cannibalism, A Perfect Natural History by Bill Shute. This, as the title suggests, it does what it says on the tin. It's a book about cannibalism, and I think there are just going to be so many funky, quirky, terrifying things in here that sound like they should be made up but are actually going to be true, and that's why I think this one should come under this heading. I've been reading, as I said earlier, a little bit more natural history recently. This was a birthday present from my sister back in March, and I still haven't got around to it yet. So is The Man Who Loved Books Too Much. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Vicky. I really need to read these books that you bought me. And yeah, I am really keen for it. The few instances of kind of cannibalism that I've seen in like natural history shows, like Animal Planet type stuff, has been absolutely fascinating. So I think this is going to be very cool. And then we have one last topic, and that is voice. And again, I have 3 books for this. So the first one is Why Dinosaurs Matter by Kenneth Lacavara. And this is giving a voice to the long dead, being these extinct animals, and specifically showing why they, like the title says, still matter and are still relevant and interesting to study. So it's quite short. It's based off of his TED talk, and it's got like a decent number of pictures in it as well. So I think I'm almost definitely going to get to this one just because of like how easy it is. But it has been on my shelf for a little while, and I really need to read another dinosaur book. It's been too long. I love them. I mean, I love them enough to be getting them tattooed on my body, so like, I clearly love them. And then I also have Greta Thunberg's tiny little book, which is No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference. This is minuscule. It's kind of her treatise. Obviously, we all know who Greta Thunberg is at the moment. She is giving a voice to a younger generation. She is speaking up about so many things, and this is why this seemed so fitting for voice. I do also have another book somewhere on my shelves about climate change, which like I bought them kind of in a bit of a bundle with Waterstones, so I might try and get around to that one as well, but this one made more sense for voice. It's so short, of course I'm going to read it in November. I can't not get to it. And then the final one, which was actually a recommendation recently off of Olive's channel, and she talked so passionately about it that I just had to go out and immediately buy it, and that is Gulag, A History by Anne Applebaum. This is about the Gulag, which was like a terrifying regime in Russian history. There's a bit of Russia going on in the background at the moment, and is supposed to be harrowing and intense and horrifying, and this book aims to give a voice to all of those people who have lost their voice because of this regime, basically putting them in like, it's described as like Russia's forgotten Holocaust, essentially. So the point is to try and bring it back into the foreground and be like, hey, some really appalling stuff happened over there as well, guys. So I think it's going to be really intense to read, but I am weirdly like looking forward to it. Is that the right word? I don't know, but I thought that it seemed very fitting to put into the label of voice. So there we have it, 12 books. If I'm very ambitious, I might get to all 12, but I think Gulag and the Romanovs are big enough that they're going to slow me down. But we have some nice thin ones in there that might help to balance it out. And as always, I'm going to try and grab a few of these on audiobook for ones that I don't already have on audiobook. I will link everything that needs linking down below, and you know, I would really recommend that you take part. If you're watching this video, presumably you're semi into non-fiction, and the point to it isn't to just read non-fiction all month. I'm going to try to, because that's what I did last year and it was really good fun, but it's just to read more non-fiction than you normally would. So if you read like nothing, pick one and you've officially taken part, and it's trying to just kind of break down some of the stigma that surrounds non-fiction as it being considered boring, which it totally isn't, because oh my god, some of my favourite books this year have been non-fiction books. So yes, that's it from me. I'm just wittering now, so I'm going to get off this camera and go have some dinner. Have a wonderful reading week. I'll chat to you soon. Bye.